Sidoni Hawthorne, and I'm the charity secretary. And I was brought into the charity by Mrs. Jackson when it first started. And I'd just like to refer to something Mrs. Jackson said when she was talking about the amount of people that we contacted when the charity first started. Mrs. Jackson gave me a manila folder like this, full of churches, health centres, doctors, community centres, and we wrote, I think my fingers were tired at the time, we wrote to over 1,000 people, because we weren't using the internet, so we weren't emailing at the time. We wrote to so many black organisations, I must say, and the response was maybe dementia was something that wasn't spoken about as much 15 years ago as it is now. Or maybe, you know, maybe they just thought, well, we don't want to touch this subject because it doesn't concern us, particularly churches. But that's another subject I'll get into another time. What I'd like to discuss today, normally I don't do very much talking for the charity, I'm in the background, I usually leave it to Mrs. Jackson and Cheryl. But today I want to talk about finances. One from a personal point of view and one from the legalities of finances. Again, back to something Mrs. Jackson said about funerals, I've noticed, and I've noticed amongst friends, because I'm of that age now where soon my daughter will be saying to me I'm one of the elders, where a lot of people in their late 40s, early 50s are just dying of various diseases and conditions. I mean, every week there's someone I know who's passed away, there's a funeral, and they're usually younger than me, or mid-50s. But my issue is the family and what happens with finances and how the elders trust their children, trust their families, because a lot of them don't. So, you've got, say for instance, I'm lucky, with my dad's now passed away, but with my mum and dad we're very lucky, we've got a very small family. And so my brother and my sister, everything that belongs to my mum and dad, we're on it. If anything happens, I control all my mum's finances from the UK. She lives in Jamaica. So the trust is there. So she knows, as a power of attorney, I'm not suddenly going to go to the US and sell all their land and sell all their houses and sell their house in Jamaica. But for a lot of my friends, they don't even know if mum or dad have got a will. They don't discuss it. Mum's got a bank account that nobody in the family knows about. Dad's got a bank account that nobody knows about. So when they pass away, the banks are getting the money. The children don't get the money. Some of them, they don't trust their children because they think all their children want is their house and their money. Also, if the person has dementia, that steps it up another level because then they just believe everybody wants everything that they want. And it's very, very difficult. So what I would suggest, and I suggest to my friends, is to talk to their parents and say, look, Mum, who's on the gas bill? Is it just you on the gas bill? Is it you and Dad? Or is there another family member? Because a lot of these organisations will want to take your money, but when you want to get your money back, they're not going to give it to you. And if your name is not on any of the documents, you can forget it. So phone bills, gas bills. I think me and Cheryl had a discussion last year about mortgages, but then we realised that could be a bit difficult because if someone is put on a mortgage and something happens and the trust is gone, that person can sell their house under their parents. So that's got to, that's something that's got to be looked at very carefully.
Sorry, would you advise, well, I know you were saying about the trust issue, but my brother was thinking of suggesting my brother goes onto my mother's mortgage.
We were talking about this the other day, and I think, I suggest that everything I say to you today, please go and seek legal advice as well, just to clarify it.
Yeah.
I suggest that a member of the family is on the house deeds or documents.
Okay.
Because I personally believe, and I think Cheryl might be able to confirm it for me, if you have all mental capacities and that person is on the house at that time or on your bank account, if anything does happen to you and you lose your faculties, there's nothing that can be done about it because that person's, when you were sound mind when you made that decision originally. However, if the mental capacity starts going, you've got to be very careful because if you all have to go to the bank together, someone in the bank might recognise something may be a bit wrong and they will not go through the process they will need you to go to the doctors to get a document to say this person's of sound mind, and they can make their own decisions. So if at the moment everything's okay, it's best that you probably seek legal advice and see what you can do.
So I was going to try and get power of attorney.
Right.
We'll be discussing that with Mum anyway.
And there's other problems as well, because I was reading last year the government is saying, because of this inheritance tax, and the government, if you own your own assets and you've got to go into residential care, they're going to use your home to pay for your care.
Yeah.
So if you suddenly start putting people onto the house documents, I think they've made it law that it's a crime, because you're actually trying to defraud.
Dodge, yeah.
Probably I'm using the wrong words, but
No,
in
I
you
know
know
what
that's
you
the kind
mean.
of case.
Yeah.
So I suggest that you seek legal advice when it comes to something like that.
Okay, thank you.
I was saying to Cho on the way here, with my father, when I first applied for power of attorney, they didn't separate the two. You didn't have financial, and you didn't have health and welfare. They were both together.
Right.
And then when we decided to go for it, they were separate. And then I said to myself, do you know what, Dad, we're going to convince Dad to get a will done, because it was a case of not him leaving anything to us as such, because we did not put anything into what he owned, but it was just to make sure that the government didn't get his house. If he wanted to give it to Battersea Dogs Home, that was his prerogative. He could do that. So we managed to get the will sorted. But you could get power of attorney through the bank. So if you're just looking at the bank accounts, you can get power of attorney through most of the banks. You don't need to go to the public guardianship office to get that power of attorney.
Okay.
So if, for instance, you just want to be able, if they go into hospital all the time, and you just want to make sure that they're in the black all the time, you can get power of attorney with them when you go to the bank. So you can do that through the banks. I know that for a fact. And again, back to utility bills, you can just phone up and get your name put onto the utility bills as well.
Yeah.
So you phone up gas and electric.
Oh, actually, get your name put on it, because I've rung them and they know that they've spoken to me and Mum's given them permission to speak to me,
Yes,
etc.
but as long as it...
But actually to put my name actually on the bill
Yeah,
itself.
so you've got to make them aware that you're the other person. So
Yeah.
it's written down somewhere, documented somewhere.
Okay.
Not just they've got your name there and you just phone up to query. So if anything happens to Mum and you have to query the bill, yes, you can go on the phone and speak to them, but you actually have control of the bill. So if anything happens and she's no longer in your house, someone's got to control those bills.
Yeah.
So I think if you can have Mr. and Mrs., I don't see why you can't have son or daughter on the bill as well.
Okay.
But think query about that.
Sure, thank you.
Okay. I'm now going to talk about power of attorney, and you have to bear with me because first we're going to discuss this. Okay. So the Mental Capacity Act was brought in 2005, and the Mental Capacity Act was to protect those who do not have the ability or the capacity to make decisions for themselves. So when we look at mental capacity, we're looking at understanding information that's relevant to decisions that you have to make. Also, that you can retain the information long enough to make the decision, and also communicating those decisions through different mediums. So it could be through sign language, it could be talking, it could be writing. Now, the lasting power of attorney, which is the LPA, it's a legal document that allows you to appoint someone to make certain decisions on your behalf. So if all of you in here have children, you can do your power of attorney now and give to your children. You can write it up. You don't need to register it straight away, but you can write it up and decide who is going to be your power of attorney. And maybe next year or so you can decide, I'm actually going to register it. Because you have to register it before you lose your mental capacity, otherwise it doesn't register. Okay. So, it's the legal document that allows you to appoint someone to make certain decisions on your behalf. Basically allows you to plan ahead. So there are two types. You've got the property and the financial affairs, and you've got the health and personal affairs. They're £110 each, £220 together. If your form, when you fill it in, is returned, because it is invalid, you can return again within 3 months for £55. If you do not complete the form correctly, it will be rejected at the registration if it contains any errors. Now there is discount for people who are means-tested benefits. So that could be housing benefit, job seekers allowance, universal credit, income support, and there's a 50% free reduction for dependents on, yes, universal credit, so that already.
Like pension tax, pension credit.
No, I don't think pension credit, because there was some I saw today, and I don't think pension credit, but again, everything I say to you, please clarify it afterwards. Now the office that you will send the form to, and you can download the form off the internet, is the Public Guardian Office. Now when you send the form in, when we initiated my father's but didn't follow it through, we had 3 sheets, and basically you notify 3 people. So it could be family members, or if you're in this country and mum has other relatives in Jamaica or other parts of the Caribbean or Africa, you can send these forms out to them and notify them. You don't have to, but you notify them to let them know that you are the power of attorney. And if they've got any concerns, this is just in case, yes, you might be looking after mum, but you could be a bit dodgy. And the rest of the family know, but they're not here to help with mum's care. So once you send this out, if they do not agree with you or they have concerns, they will send this form back to the PGO, and the PGO will then do whatever they need to do regarding the dispute within the family. Now the PGO gives 6 weeks, because they say it may take a while for those forms to go out and come back. So you've got a 6-week gap, or 6-week window once the form's gone in. Now, if you do not want to notify members of your family or friends, because it doesn't necessarily have to be members of your family, it could be your next door neighbour. You don't trust your family, but you trust your friend. Or your friend could be your POA. It does not need to be a member of your family that does it. But if you pick somebody that's not a member of your family, again, when these notices go out, your family then can say, we don't want that person, but the family have to justify. They have to have evidence and something to justify why the PGO will not give that person the power of attorney. Now, if you do not want your family to be involved, you need to get certificate providers. And those are 2 people that have known the person who is writing out the power, who is giving the power of attorney. They have to know them for 2 years. And it has to be a doctor, or a social worker, or a district nurse. It has to be somebody in those professional. And once signed, those are sent out. And as I said before, once those signs are completed, they can be given back to the PGO at any time. Now there's something called deputyship. Now the deputyship is when the family may have, or the person who is going for who wants someone to be their POA, it's if they've got a substantial amount of money or assets, and the family have not got the experience or the capacity to deal with those kind of assets. So what they would do, they would appoint a solicitor, but the courts will do that. It will be down to the courts. So the money is controlled by somebody else, but it's through the courts. Does that make sense? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Good.
Okay. Now, the courts usually give the deputyship to the financial section of the POA. They normally don't do it for the health and welfare section. They're very reluctant to do that. So it's very rare that you find that they will give deputyship for the health and welfare section of the POA. Now, one last thing. If the attorneys, once the POA is registered at the PGO, if the attorneys can't get on, or there's a dispute between them, the lasting power of attorney could be cancelled. Also, if one of the, if there's more than one person who has power of attorney, if they die or they want out, it could be cancelled as well, unless you've got somebody else that will step in their place. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, if I remember the form, that extra person may be added on, but they may not be someone what's active, but they're there just in case someone may pass away or something they don't need to do it. But I personally believe that you really do need to ensure that the finances are in place, because once that person is diagnosed with dementia and they own a home, and then we've got to talk about care, and then money's tight, and when we don't want to sell the home because that's the actual family home and everyone lives there, things start getting complicated. Because your local authority is not going to pay for their care if they have assets. And if you were looking at some of the numbers, the prices Mr. Trussell had up on the board, it is not cheap. So we're looking at, if we're going to a residential, correct me if I'm wrong, a residential care home for a week, a residential nursing care home, we could be looking at £1,500 a week. Is that correct?
Yeah.
If not more, easily. Now my argument, and nobody can quite answer me, maybe Mr. Trussell might be able to do it, is you've worked all your life. You've put all this money into the system. You bought your house, you're settled, everything. The woman next door has never worked a day in her life. Yet, her care in the same care home as you is paid for. Yours, you have to pay out of your assets. So when your house, okay, they say they take X amount of your assets, but depending on how long you live, and a lot of us, we might think we're going quickly, but we live longer than we think. When that money goes, what happens? Are you still in that same care home that you were paying the £700 a week for? What, do they move you somewhere else? Because I believe if I've been paying into a system and that same woman is in the same place as me, I should have the penthouse. She can live downstairs. I've been paying for this system. I've paid into it. Yes, okay, she's on means tested benefit and she's paying her insurance or whatever it may be for my benefit, but I've actually worked and paid into the system. And depending on how much you earn, you're paying a lot of taxes, so you're paying a lot into it. So my thing is, just ensure, if you possibly can, make sure if you have family members and there are issues around finances and dementia, that you kind of tidy up the ends so that everything is in place, so if anything does happen, you have everything in order. So even if you've got get a power of attorney completed if possible, and get it registered, because it's going to take at least 6-7 weeks before it comes back to you stamped. So get that in order, but you have to make sure that you have their consent, and also that they have the mental capacity. Now, if you don't want family members to partake in it, and you ask your GP, he will ask the questions to find out if they have the mental capacity to make this decision, to make you the power of attorney, or whoever it is they wish to make the power of attorney.
And they haven't got it?
If they haven't got it, then really, you haven't got much say in what happens. Because with the power of attorney, if you're looking after their finances, you are the next person in charge. You're the one that's taking over because they're not in a position to do it. So if you haven't got this in order, you may have some things that you can do, but you can't be sorting out mortgages and things because you haven't got the power to do that, and they haven't given you the power to do that. They might have verbally, and you know they want you to do it, but it's not on paper. So when you go somewhere, they're just not going to take your word for it. You've got to have it stamped and sealed. I think it's like a seal that they put on it. And once you've got that, then you can do what you need to do to sort out their finances and their health as well. Because, for instance, depending on the person that you're looking after, they might decide, if anything happens to me, I don't want to be resuscitated. That could be a discussion that you have with them, and they could tell you, I do not want to be resuscitated. Now, on the power of attorney, on that section, they can write that. They can say, I do not want to be resuscitated, but they can't tell the doctor that because they're not in a position to do that. You will be telling the doctor because it's written down and you have the power of attorney to do that. So that's something you need to discuss with them.
Okay, can I ask a question? Because I think what you're saying is very interesting, and I'm just looking at it in terms of my time.
Yeah.
Is this something that I should be thinking about now with my siblings?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Because, again, back to what Mr. Trussell and Mrs. Jackson was saying, and from experience and with friends as well,
Mm-hmm.
if you're the oldest member of the family, my father came to live with me.
Okay.
So I'd done a lot of his care. I left work, did his care, but then I felt I needed to go back to it because I'm a teacher. So I thought if I was out of the loop too long, I won't understand what they're talking about when I go back.
Yeah.
So
That's true.
we had social services in, but I still had to find a private carer on top of the social services because I didn't trust the carers that were coming in. Because the kind of carers that were coming in,
Right.
you know, and this is another thing, if you're working and you've got carers coming in, you're not there to keep an eye on them. Don't get me wrong, there's some fantastic carers out there, but there's some carers that really need an eye kept on them, so they might come in late. And my dad, his thing is, well, you know, they don't get up here that much of money, so I just signed, so he would sign their timesheet, and when they're supposed to be there an hour, they've only been there for 10 minutes. And they're being paid to come and care for my dad when I'm not there. So we had another carer who was there all the time.
You got someone through a private agency?
I got a good friend,
Okay.
and we paid her to do my father's care.
And sorry, is that covered by something like attendance allowance?
No, because that was private now,
Okay.
and due to things, we couldn't go through that with her.
Yeah.
But even, I was reading an article this week in The Guardian, and I was going to put it on our Facebook page, but I wasn't sure how people would take it. Basically, it was don't give up your job to do care. Because it's almost again like, well, if people get benefits, they're going to defraud us. I'm not sure how much the carers allowance is at the moment, but it was £50 when I was looking after Dad. I couldn't get it because I was working. And even if I was on benefit, they means tested it. So whatever my benefit is, they take that £50 off my benefit. And you're caring for somebody 20